Just going to start off with a reading from 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, love never fails. And to me, this passage just epitomizes Grandma Nola. Grandma lived her life full of love, and she was just a special woman. In just talking to so many of you here today, and just the same words keep coming up: sweet, loving, caring, always with a smile on her face, and just what great memories that we have. And we've learned a lot about Grandma Nola in these past couple days that, to be honest, I never knew. A lot of stories. She had completed 2 notebooks, a notebook from probably 20, 25 years ago that she completed, that she was able to, that I just heard stories that I'd never heard. So we're going to share a few of those with you today, and we hope you're interested in hearing some of this story too.
So Grandma was born to her parents Dirk and Anna Monsma at their home on their farm near Tainter, Iowa. Grandma, in the notebook, wrote about some of her responsibilities and how difficult life was on the farm back in the 1920s and 1930s. She wrote about carrying corn cobs into the house to burn, filling the kerosene lamps before dark each night so they'd have enough light, about carrying the ashes out from the fire. As Grandma grew, she first attended school at the Ludwig Country School, which was near their home, and she attended school through the 8th grade. She would typically walk about 3/4 of a mile to school. She didn't go to kindergarten, skipped that year, and then she also finished her 2nd and 3rd grades together in 1 year. So she was only 12 years old when she graduated from the 8th grade. So Grandma was evidently a very good student. And she actually wrote about this too. She remembered getting 100% in her civics class, and she also finished 2nd in the county spelling bee.
At the beginning of her 8th grade year, Grandma remembered staying at her Grandpa and Grandma Monsma's for the night, but learned the next morning she had a new baby brother, Gordon, who weighed over 11 pounds at birth. Grandma even got to pick out Gordon's middle name, which is Laverne. Sorry. She wrote that. she also wrote that Gordon has never forgiven her for that. It's great to see Gordon here today with us on David. They made the special trip from Colorado Springs to be here today. Grandma attended Linville High School, which was several miles to the north. She often rode her Shetland pony to school. I didn't know that. Her friends called it a 6-legged pony because Grandma's long legs were so close to the ground when she was riding. Grandma didn't play any sports while she was in school, but she learned they really wanted her to go out for the basketball team. I wonder why. She did sing in Glee Club. She sang in the Girls Quartet, and she was in several plays and operettas. I didn't know that either. Grandma graduated from Linville High School in 1936 at the young age of 16. She'd always wanted to go on to college to become a teacher, but her parents couldn't afford to do so after the Depression.
So while she was in high school, she met a special someone. She met her future husband, Glenn Vanderkraal. And so their first date was on Valentine's Day of 1935, and they actually were married on Valentine's Day 4 years later, 1939. They had a very small wedding at her parents' house because Grandpa's father, Dirk Monsma, was in bed actually struggling with cancer. So he was able to sit up just long enough to be at the ceremony, but then passed away just a couple months later. And thankfully, Grandpa Monsma had accepted Jesus as his Savior just a few months before that. So glad that he's in heaven with her today. Grandpa Glenn's sister, Maureen, and her boyfriend, and then her future husband at the time too, Cleo Vanderkamp, were the maid of honor and best man. So this is where the families really start mixing up a little bit. So I see some of you out here, and I'm not sure exactly how we're related. And the scary thing is, I think we're probably related 2 or 3 times, probably, in a lot of cases. So I think my parents always call that Dutch bingo or something like that. But that was a special relationship because that actually was the relationship that kind of brought the 2 families together for my families, from the Vanderkamp and Vanderkraal side. So It was also an important relationship during this time where Grandma told the story of how she became a Christian. They were on a double date with Cleo Marine at that time. And I'll say it exactly in her words that she wrote it, because I think it's really special words. And so Glenn, Maureen, and Cleo were Christians, and they would witness to me. We four had planned to have a picnic at Montezuma Park on the 4th of July in 1936. The previous evening, Glenn had made a statement: if we were killed in a car accident the next day, where would I be, heaven or hell? And it was that night by my bedside that I received Christ as my Savior. So that was a great story.
Grandpa Glenn and Grandma Nola's early married life had very humble beginnings. Evidently, Grandpa Glenn had to borrow the $5 it took to pay the preacher for the wedding ceremony. To make a living, and Glenn helped his father on the farm. Grandma had been given 80 chickens to raise by her parents, and that's what helped them pay for their groceries during their early married life. Grandma also wrote about remembering, she remembered helping Grandpa Glenn harvest in the falls, which meant long days of rising early to chore and harness the horses. And she wrote that they often would have a whole wagon load of corn picked by noon. During their married life too, Grandpa Glenn and Grandma Nola hosted several different evangelists at their home. They were coming through town for Bible crusades and gospel meetings. Grandpa and Grandma were soon blessed with their first child, my Aunt Dorothy, Craig and Mark's mother. Evidently, Aunt Dorothy was named after one of the evangelists who had stayed with Grandpa Glenn and Grandma Nola, Dorothy May. Grandma remembered Dorothy as being a daddy's girl. She said her first word was happy. Evidently, that's what she answered every time someone asked how she was doing.
That actually sounded like Grandma saying it.
A couple of years later then, Grandpa Glenn and Grandma were blessed with their first son, my dad, Keith. His full name was Keith Duane, and that is because he had the same initials then as Grandma's grandfather, Klaus Dirk Monsma, who always went by KD.
On her third pregnancy, Grandma's belly had grown quite large, and they were thinking maybe it was twins, but the doctor could only hear one heartbeat. They were so glad and surprised when the twins were born. Uncle Jerry and Aunt Judy Ann. Just me, Aunt Judy.
Yeah.
In 1958, Glenn and Nola moved from their farmhouse of 16 years to the Vandy Crawl home place, southeast of Sully. Along with Glenn's brother Harold, they bought the Garner farm and were excited to farm it together. Unfortunately, only 2 years later, in 1960, Glenn suffered a heart attack on a Saturday morning, and he died the next morning in the Grinnell Hospital at the young age of 43. Dorothy had just married my dad, Merlin Vanderleest, a few weeks earlier. Uncle Keith was 16 years old and had 2 years left of high school. The twins, Judy and Jerry, were only 10. What a responsibility for a now single mom.
So Dorothy and Merlin had been living in a mobile home in Des Moines, but they moved home that summer then to be with Grandma and the family to be able to help. In Grandma's words, that was a large sacrifice for them, but a great moral support to me and the kids. They had just started dairy cows, so Dorothy became the milkmaid, and Uncle Keith, did the field work with his Uncle Harold. Merlin was teaching in Grinnell, but got summer jobs at the grocery store, and Dorothy later at the bank. While everyone pitched in to make it work for that first year, Grandma decided to sell the family farm over the winter, and Grandma and the kids then moved to Sully. So she had worked several jobs during this time. Her primary job, though, once she moved to Sully, was as the board secretary at the Linville Sully Schools.
So Grandma had worked in Sully until Jerry and Judy were ready to graduate from high school. It was at that time then that Grandma decided to move from Sully to Ames. It's at that point where the story gets a little personal for me now, because Grandma owned a house in Sully that she then decided to sell to my mother's sister Jeanette, so my Aunt Jeanette, and her husband Roger. I think one of the conditions of that sale, though, was that my dad, Keith, be allowed to still live in the basement. So Grandma sold the house with my father, Keith. But all worked out very well, because while my mom and dad had met a few years before, now my mom could go visit dad when she went and visited her sister Jeanette and brother-in-law Roger, and eventually they fell in love and married, and several years later, here I am. All right, so after Grandma then had moved to Ames, she worked as a receptionist and a bookkeeper at the veterinary medicine college up at Iowa State, where Jerry and Judy were going to college, and so it was the first of many of us who eventually went on to get our degrees then at Iowa State. During that time, Grandma was able to raise her kids and also managed to put them all through school and got them all off on successful careers of their own.
Grandma moved to Pella in 1969 and worked at the Pella Medical Center, where she met her second husband, Keith Emmert. Their first date was the day my little brother was born, on July 4, 1970. My sister Lori and I were actually on their first date. We went to the fireworks celebration in Pella. I remember that well, actually. And they were married in 1971. Nola instantly doubled her number of kids to 8, and eventually would double the number of grandkids from 8 to 16. While it can be difficult to merge families together later in life, Keith and Nola did it so well. Both of them took each other's families on and loved each other's kids and grandkids as their own. For my siblings and my cousins, we fortunately never got a chance to meet Grandpa Glenn, but Grandpa Keith was a wonderful grandpa to all of us, as Grandma Nola was to all of her new kids and future grandkids.
For us grandkids, it was always such a wonderful treat to be able to go over to Grandpa and Grandma's house. You know, I'm sure many of you will have wonderful memories of that house. Just a few of them that we want to share. Remember that Grandpa Keith and Grandma Nola often had a card game or a game of Rubby Cube or dominoes going down the basement with a running total of the game that had probably been going on for months. It was also so much fun to go over to Grandpa and Grandma's house because you knew you'd always eat very well because Grandma was such a wonderful cook. That was homemade bread, homemade cookies, the homemade noodles, chicken and noodles that she always made, her special fried chicken and apple pie, banana cream pie, or just whatever it was. It was always fun to go over to Grandma's because you knew you'd eat well. And just some other personal memories that I have, and I'm sure you all can share many. When I remember Grandma would always babysit for me if my folks were working, and one time when I was about 4 years old, I remember I fired her as my babysitter. She never let me live that one down. I remember riding big wheels with Craig around the garage and other cousins. That backyard of there's that house on Elm Street. We were playing with that huge tree and Grandpa and Grandma's big garden there. For us, that tree doubled both as home plate and as the end zone line. That big garden made a great sideline, or it also was the right field bleachers for a home run. The other thing I always remember, Craig and I were talking about how we used to jam stuff down Grandma's laundry chute that would go down to the basement. It was so much fun to run downstairs and find it down there in the laundry chute.
One of my best memories of Grandma was a song she used to sing, Lost in the Woods. I'm not going to sing it for you. I can sing it for you. Kate can sing it. But it was a very sad song about two little kids that get lost in the woods and they're never found. And she always sang it tried to sing it in a very sad and mournful way, for dramatic effect. But she could easily get provoked to start giggling. She never made it through the whole song. But anyway, that's one of my favorite songs. Well, it's sad to lose Grandma at Christmas. It was fitting that she passed away on Christmas Eve, as that was the day we always got together at Grandpa Emmert's house for our family Christmas celebration. We'd usually have ground chicken and ham sandwiches in the basement, followed by gift opening and games upstairs. What awesome memories. When we'd go visit Grandma in the cottages recently, you'd often need to remind her of her name, but she was always so warm, so friendly, and always glad to see you. She was a grandma's grandma. She really was. She'd become a little repetitive during our visits, however, whether it was asking either Craig or me, "Where did all your hair go?" Or my sister Lori, "I think you had red hair." I think she's not here. Good memories.
Sure, I'll just chime in some other recent memories too of Grandma in the cottages, and very similar to what Mark said. Grandma always still wanting to be the gracious hostess that she was. Whether it had been 3 weeks or 3 months since we'd been there, it was always it's been so long since you've been here. And she didn't say it because she wanted you to feel guilty. She said it because she just loved having visitors and loved seeing you and being the hostess. The other thing, I'm just watching her wanting to get to know my girls, and it was a struggle, you know, with her, just kind of figuring where they fit in. But she knew they were family, and she wanted to get to know them and ask questions about them. It was just wonderful. My last visit then with Grandma was at Thanksgiving. We were down. It was a special night. My sister Terry and her girls were here, and my wife Lori and our 3 girls went over to the cottages to visit her. And it was late, and oftentimes once it was either near mealtime or near bedtime, Grandma would let you know it was time to go to bed. But this night, we were just having a great time sitting around talking and laughing and watching the girls play. And the gentleman who was going around putting all the residents to bed kept coming up and saying, "Nola, ready to go to bed?" "I don't think so." And he'd come back again in 15, 20 minutes. "Nola, ready to go to bed?" "No, not really." And she stayed up about an hour and a half past her bedtime. It was just a very special night, and I'll keep that memory the rest of my life.
The last time I saw Grandma was over Thanksgiving as well, and we were there, and Kate and Piper, she loved hearing anyone sing. And so Kate and Piper sang Silent Night. It was the day after Thanksgiving, so started into the Christmas carols. And so she just loved hearing them sing Silent Night together. And she must have been hungry that night, though, because she wanted her meal that night. It's actually what she stopped and said, we were there for quite a while, but she said, "You know, I think they're waiting for me to eat." So she was always worried about getting that too. So Grandma Nola was just a sweet, kind, loving woman, and I've always known that. But just hearing these stories of her past, and if you think about the things that had happened to her in her life, that I wasn't unaware that her father had passed away, you know, shortly after her wedding, and then to lose her husband shortly after her first daughter was married. That's such
nervous.
Yeah, exactly. I thought about that, and I'm hoping the trend wouldn't have continued. So we're glad it stopped too. And then, you know, in 2009, she lost her son at a very young age, Keith. And so, and through that all, I think it's a lesson for all of us of just, she kept a smile on her face. She'd never become bitter. She was still the sweet, loving, kind woman that she always was. And I know that's a lesson for me, for the way I live my life. We're going to miss Grandma in a big way, but as I said to many of you here, it's a celebration today. We know, as you can tell from the story, faith was a huge part of her life. We know exactly where she is today. There's no question about that. And the great thing is she's reunited with all these special people in her life and in all of your lives. Her 2 husbands, her grandparents, her parents and grandparents, her son Keith. And I know her smile is just as big today as what it was before. So hope you share in these special memories of Nola with us. Thank you.